So the next thing we want to do is change these pictures accordingly. In my random user generator API, where do they like to store the JPEGs for the avatars? Right here, thumbnail. So .picture.thumbnail is how I access that JPEG. Alright, so let's go to our image tag and change the source attribute. Let's go ahead and find image. Okay, oops. Now the first thing I notice is this alt tag of Yahoo News should also change accordingly, so we'll do that in a few seconds. But first, the source attribute should be changed. So how are we going to change it? We don't want to use mustache templates in this case because we're dealing with attributes, so we need to use v-bind. So notice in Vue's example, they use a variable called message, which comes from the data object. Alright, so we're going to use the same kind of thing. So first step for dealing with attributes is to use v-bind : or the shortcut is just simply : source equals, and we could have a variable just like Vue's example, but we could also have our own custom function return a value. So I'm going to say get pic, and I'm going to pass in the currently selected email, and let's say methods object, and define our function. Again, we're using passing a parameter there. So what are we going to return? So we want to return the JPEG URL. So for now, just to make sure the plumbing works, I'm going to copy and paste this JPEG URL into here just to make sure the plumbing works. Go back and refresh, and I should see, right, all the pictures are the same, which means if I want to dynamically change it now, I have to say .picture.thumbnail for whatever was just passed in our function. So because we were passed an email obj.picture.thumbnail. That should work. So let's test it. Refresh, and there we go. Perfect. All the pictures have changed accordingly. Alright, so the next thing I want to do is change the alt text. So right now it says Yahoo News, so we'll do the same kind of thing. So let's create v-bind and name it a function, and we'll pass in our currently selected email. And just to show you something a little different, ES6, you don't have to necessarily say function when you're defining the function. You could just write the function name and then the parameter, and that'll be fine too. So here we want to pass in the first and last name, and that's how .name.first is how my current API structures. For Macro it'll be different, I think. And let's just say '(s) avatar. So that should return a string of the first and last name. Let's just test that out. Now before I refresh, if I inspect our current state here, I still have the Yahoo News. Okay, so let's go ahead and refresh. Now let's see. So let's inspect. Alt is Ramona Bell's avatar, which in that name is right. It's coming from the exact thing. So how about this one? This guy, Isaiah Bradley, should say Isaiah Bradley's avatar. So it's working. Okay, so the next step is to try to figure out when a user clicks an email, something should happen. So basically we need a way to know what the currently selected email is. So the first thing to do is to add the click event handler. So which of these HTML tags wraps around the whole email? It would be this div tag here, so that's where I'll add v-on click, or a shortcut is @click. And just like before, I'll write in my own custom function. And notice I'm passing in the currently email argument, which is important. So that's how I'm going to test. So let's define our function. There's our parameter, email object. Alright, so basically we want to remember our selected email. So our variable selected email, this .selected email will be set or equal to whatever was clicked on. So email object. and that's it. So that's how we remember our selected emails. So let's go ahead and inspect it. Let's go to the console. Let's access our selected email variable. And currently it should be set to the first one, 4494. Does that match 449? Yep. Okay. So let's click on the third email. Click. Let's try it again. Clear the console and access that same variable. And now it should change accordingly. 2704, 2704. Perfect. So now that is working, we can change the main page accordingly, right? Because we now have the selected email object. So whatever's in that selected email object is guaranteed to be our current email. So let's get rid of some extra paragraph tags that we don't need. Okay, so let's replace these hard-coded information like hello from Toronto, for example, with our currently selected object. So how do we do that? This is where we'd use mustache templates, right? So remember, our click event handler passed in the email object, and that email object sets our selected email variable within Vue, right? So that means we can access our selected email variable from within here. So let's go ahead and do that. So mustache templates, selected email, and I'll just put in some basic field name. And remember, so just to review, our selected email came from this variable within data, which in turn was set by our function, which was passed the email argument back in our event click handler. And that email in turn comes from the emails array, right? Okay, so it's just Vue and other frameworks. There's basically a lot of data-driven design. All right, so let's do the same thing for the other hard-coded values. Let's put in the first last name here, or maybe I'll just, yeah. And last name as well. And the date, I don't really have a date on my JSON API, but I do have a date of birth, so I'll use that. All right. And finally, the paragraph. Now again, I don't have a body, so I'll just use something simple like a, I don't know, cell phone number. All right, so let's test that out, see if it works. And the main body is changing accordingly. Great. So the next step is the CSS class. So whenever the user clicks on an email, we want to make it look selected by adding the appropriate class name. So where is that email? HTML code. All right, so there's the class, and we want to add a class dynamically. So how does Vue handle that? So let's look up their documentation. So here they have a v-bind class, but we're going to follow this second example because they actually have a regular class of static, and we're going to add a dynamic class as well. So that's what we have here. We have this class that's already been established. So we'll just say v-bind class. So how does this this work? Let's just look at their documentation again. Okay, so this active class will be added if the variable is active is true. If it's false, then the active class will not be added. So that's basically how it works. So similarly, we'll do the same thing. So the class to make it look selected is email item selected, and that will only pop in if our custom function is selected, will return true. So let's go ahead and put that in. And so we're going to return a Boolean value. So how do we test if it's true or false? So we're going to say if whatever was passed equals our currently selected email. in our view variables. Let's see if that works. Oh, there's a bug. What does it say here? So is selected is not defined. That means my function name is possibly wrong. So I called is selected here. That should be the function name. So let's make sure to delete that. Okay, so now both function names match. Let's refresh. Oh, the API just took a while, but the selected CSS class now works. Wonderful.